So first and foremost, a very, very warm welcome to everyone for joining the webinar and taking your time out on a Sunday. And of course, this is a very exciting topic. I mean, along with you all, I'm also very excited to be here. I mean, hearing our experts speak on this topic because generative AI, I mean, is a huge buzzword in the industry, in all industry, and of course, uh, finance is no different. So I mean, this is something which is like very useful in finance as well. So today's topic of discussion in the panel, we will be discussing about specifically how about like the generative AI applications in finance. And to discuss about these points, we are extremely glad to have with us our panelists Sanjay Bhatia and Ritesh Chandra. Just to give their basic brief background before we proceed with the talk, right? So Sanjay has done his MBA in finance and has done his MSc in machine learning and artificial intelligence from Liverpool John Moores University, and he also has a postgraduate diploma in machine learning and AI from IIIT Bangalore. Is currently working as a director with UBS in the risk modeling and analytics, in model risk management and control in the chief risk office function. Sanjay has been working in risk management and analytics for more than 1.5 decades, particularly as a mainstay experience in risk models and methodology space encompassing Basel, Advanced AIRB, IFRS 9, IMM, SSECR, Exposure, XVA, FRTB, OTC derivative pricing, and other advanced modeling topics. He has previously worked with various foreign banks, Barclays, RBS, Citi, Credit Suisse, in the risk consulting area. Is very passionate about imparting practical model understanding and insights, and has been a professional trainer for corporate and investment banks. His area of interest are credit and counterparty credit risk, market risk, stress testing, stochastic modeling, quantitative finance, and machine learning. So we also have with us Ritesh, and Ritesh was working as a president credit risk management with a leading private sector bank, and he has done his PGDM from IIM Calcutta, that is, and he has done his BTech from IIT Kanpur. He also is a CFA holder. Ritesh is a seasoned banking professional with like more than 14 years experience in risk management, and he is very passionate about teaching. He has conducted online sessions for the past 6 years, and he has been a stellar faculty with IIQF as well. His areas of interest are quantitative finance, machine learning, blockchain technology, and he is also a member of the board of studies in the area of finance at IMT Center of Distance Learning, CDL Ghaziabad. So first of all, a very warm welcome to Sanjay and Ritesh. Thank you so much for joining in.
Warm welcome to everyone, and thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, a very warm welcome to all the enthusiasts, and thanks maybe for joining in.
Yes, absolutely. Right. So, I mean, before we start with the proceedings, a very brief outline on how we would proceed with the, overall plan of the session, right? So, we would actually take up various questions that we'll be discussing with the panelists on various aspects of Gen AI and its application in finance, right? And once after the discussion happens, then of course the floor will be open to Q&A. So everyone, please feel free to ask any questions, queries that actually you might be having, right? You feel free to type in the chat window any questions or queries that you have, and we would be taking up as many questions as we can. Right, so we want the session to be very interactive, right? So you can post your questions now, or maybe like any that comes to your mind once we have had the general discussion, absolutely at your convenience, right? So we want the session to be very interactive. However, since the participation size is quite large, so unfortunately we would not be able to allow you to speak up, but nonetheless you can type in your questions, queries in the chat window, and we would take up all those questions, right? So with that, maybe like let's hit the nail in the directly, right? Starting with the first question. This is for you, Sanjay, to start with. How Gen AI fits in the overall scheme of AI ecosystem? Because what capabilities sets Gen AI models differently from AI supervised, unsupervised, deep and reinforcement learning algorithms? So, I mean, Sanjay, this is for you.
Yeah, thanks, Nitish. Thanks for this opportunity, and glad to have this panel discussion with Ritesh onboarded. Right. So the question is quite relevant because generally maybe different forms of learning within the AI are a bit of overlapping as well as has their distinct character, right? Where Gen AI sits, it's a bit of amalgamation between deep neural network learning, because many of the generative AI algorithms, are based on, a capability to generate content, generate maybe ideas, generate solutions out of a new data set, right? So generative AI in a way has this unique capability vis-a-vis other algorithms, which allow it to generate content as well as to validate whether that content is coming from a fake source or a real source, right? Many of the generative AI algorithms like GAN, generative adversarial neural network, does exactly that, right? On one side it generates algorithm, it generates content. On other side, in a contrary way, it validates whether that content is being generated from a real data set or a fake data set. And other different forms of AI and machine learning approaches, or paradigms like supervised learning, unsupervised learning, or semi-supervised learning. Specifically, the deep learning and reinforcement learning has a heavy application in Gen AI. So deep learning, I already told that many of these the basic architectural design of these generative networks is based on neural networks, which is multilateral perceptron, right?
Correct.
And reinforcement learning, like if you want to embed this generative application into some real life world, right? Real life application where it want to interact with the real world environment, then you need to train it using the reinforcement learning. Yeah. And the other aspect is that obviously with the large language models and natural language processing, a lot of data set which is getting created for Gen AI training or such algorithmic training is based on maybe the NLP, natural language processing, or large language models, as well as when it comes to image data, it is convolutional neural network. So sometimes, many of the existing mainstream AI algorithm would be used for data generation, data preparation, on which the model is trained, the model is developed, and then Gen AI will take it forward to generate new series of data, right? Completely out of nothing, right? So that's where maybe how Gen AI sits within the overall schemes of things.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, Ritesh, coming to you, do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, most of it already has been addressed by Sanjay, but some thoughts which I have is I look at it more like a hierarchy of tools and algorithms. So at the top, you have artificial intelligence. Then machine learning is just a subset of artificial intelligence in which we use statistical techniques. The purpose
Correct,
of machine learning is primarily to, if you're supervised, then you are essentially training the machine to work with labeled data. And the objective there is to either predict or classify. If it's
correct,
unsupervised learning, then it is only about recognizing the pattern in the data and do either clustering or do association. Uh,
correct,
Deep learning to me is a further subset of machine learning because uh, machine learning or supervised machine learning in particular, those algorithms are quite good when the input is in the form of tabular or panel data. But when you have input in the form of say visual data or speech data, then somehow the conventional machine learning algorithm doesn't work very well. Okay, because
Right.
you have to structure it. So the primary difference I see between traditional machine learning and deep learning is that if you have to use unstructured data with traditional machine learning algorithms, you have to pre-process them, but deep learning is able to work with the raw data without any pre-processing required. And as Sanjay said, that they are based on these perceptrons and sigmoid neurons. Those are the kind of things. Uh, Generative AI, and mind you, deep learning is something which has revolutionized a lot of disciplines. So when it
Right.
comes to image recognition, when it comes to speech recognition, uh, across the domains, deep learning, and people don't realize that deep learning is not something very old. If I remember correctly, the first time this deep learning started making waves was from 2012 onward. There was an ImageNet challenge which was won by a group of researchers in which they showed that during deep learning techniques they were able to do image recognition at a much faster rate and with much lower error. Generative AI again is just a to me, it's just a subset of deep learning. It's a subset of deep learning. The only way the way I see the difference is in deep learning you have the artificial neural network. Here you have a transformer. So transformer, this concept actually came from Google, and they were essentially trying to build a system where they said, can we do English to French translation at a much faster pace without, with a much leaner model. So the difference between this is an artificial neural network, but the point about transformer is it is able to take input in one form and generate output in another form. That's why it's called a transformer. So that is where generative AI comes. So the algorithms, if you see, the same algorithms which are used in machine learning or which are used in deep learning, they are also being used as part of generative AI. Of course, the objective here is to generate new content, but primarily three things I find in terms of generative AI. A, natural language processing, that is a key aspect of generative AI. Secondly, you should be able to work with large language models. And finally, you should be able to have transformer based models. And mind you, generative AI is not something very new. It has been there for the last 120 years. So people who do mathematical finance, so there are these Markov processes which are used to predict what will happen to a random process. That is essentially a very rudimentary form of generative AI itself. The difference these days is a generative tool like Chat GPT that has been trained on a much larger data set. So it's the scale at which the training is happening. Billions of data points are there, and that is why it has become quite much more powerful. So primarily the difference to me, it's a hierarchy. You start with machine learning, then you come to deep learning, and deep learning gives you to generative AI. Of course, it has its own specific things like large language models and transformer. Transformer, I feel, whatever limited understanding I have, is one of the most important inventions that have happened in the area of machine learning in the last 10, 20 years. That has made a lot of difference.
True. Wonderful, wonderful. So that sets the tone for the rest of the discussion. Thanks, both of you. Now, like coming to the next question that I would like to put up. This is for Ritesh to start with, right? Uh, how Gen AI is shaping up the fintech-driven revolution in the BFSI sector, and what are the key emerging trends to chart the future outlook?
See, when we talk about fintech, essentially these are companies which are using technology to deliver
Right,
financial products and services. And even for the last 5, 10 years, AI has been an integral part of any fintech strategy because they are using it to deliver better products and services either at a lower cost or in a
right,
more personalized manner. So fintech people always have been talking about a financial world where financial services, investment products, they can be customized. They could be tailor-made for everyone. They have been talking about a world where even before you realize what financial need you have, the fintech or the algorithm will realize, and they've been talking about just-in-time financing and those kind of aspects. Now,
True.
while this whole AI thing has been there, comes in the generative AI. Generative AI, again, I told you, this has become popular only after 2022 when ChatGPT came into being. Think of generative AI as a member of the AI ML family, but now this guy is creative. So the other ones, they were only good at deciphering patterns, making predictions. This guy can generate new content, they can generate new data. These capabilities are very, very handy when it comes to fintech capabilities. And as you see today, no fintech can raise funds without having a generative AI or an AI strategy. So a lot of money from investors is supposed to be pouring in. There are all kinds of reports which say that the generative AI industry is going to grow at like 20-30% CAGR year on year. Key
Right.
themes which I have been able to see till now is one is, of course, automation is there because generative AI, one of the biggest use cases is that it can be used to automate a lot of repetitive work. So whether it
True.
is customer engagement, whether it is summarizing of reports, whether it is generating documentation, reading document, it can essentially automate a lot of stuff. That is supposed to, and not only that, IT automation also. So both business process automation as well as IT automation, where you have tools these days that can be used to automate the entire coding part. And companies like Goldman Sachs and other companies have already deployed such tools. So automation to me is one big theme. The second big theme is personalization. So with generative AI, we are talking about, giving a much more personalized experience to the customer and a much more targeted and personalized marketing campaigns and customer engagement across industries, across channels, and across all touch points where the company is interacting with the customer. So these are two big uh, themes to me. Personalization is there and automation is there. These are across industries. Of course, when it comes to specific industries, you will have other use cases like in banking, you will have risk management, fraud. But personalization and automation to me are the two big things which are going to hit everyone across the board.
Fair enough. Very good. Sanjay, anything you would like to add to this?
No, I think most of the part ground has been covered quite well by Ritesh, but I would like to just just add a few things to that. So first thing is that in the broader space, before the fintech will finally grow to a scale and scope where they could deploy these massive algorithms. Obviously, they are the lead runners as of now in terms of experimentation. Many banks, Main Street banks, are applying it in the area of compliance, legal compliance, policy compliance, and regulatory compliance. Now,
Okay.
many of the governance documentation, uh, be it model governance or model validation documents, as on date, whatever are written, they are embedded with some form of generative AI capability where
Okay.
you just click a button or pull something, and it will generate the content which will make you whatever kind of report you have written against whichever Basel paragraph or regulatory paragraph or ECB paragraph or Fed paragraph you have shown the compliance. They will recheck that and they will produce a matrix, right? So that is the capability of generative AI, and Ritesh was quite well that it goes to the automation and simplification of the existing processes where you have this lengthy process of tracing back your compliance with the legal contracts, even ISDA contracts, like there are many of the derivative contracts and all of that, right? So with the NLP capability in place, right, the content can be generated, can be also be validated or verified whether it is in compliance or alignment with the whatever subject we want to comply with, right? So that's one area. With fintech, obviously there are many asset classes, new asset classes which will come in foreplay, right? Like even cryptocurrency or green bonds or many of the carbon uh, carbon trading, right? And you don't have enough data, right? So many of the research is going on how to generate this new time series, right? Knowing that we have very last few years of very thin trading in these asset classes, and these are any which way illiquid, right? And not how to make them mainstream, how to generate synthetic data. So synthetic data generation, synthetic scenario generation in stress testing are again two focus areas where generative AI could hold a promise for the future. And as Ritesh pointed out, it is mainly owing to the fact that in risk management we are quite constrained in building models due to the data scarcity or data scarcity and data sparsity, right? So that's where it would play its role as I see it, right? Yep.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, thanks. So now, like again, we anyway, like again, both of you touched upon briefly on like again a little bit on the uh, legality and those kind of things as well. But like again, that would be my next question actually. And again, this I would pose to Sanjay to start with, right? So, what are the challenges you think are posed by the adoption of Gen AI in the context of financial regulation?
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a bottleneck as of now. That many of the, like in Europe, we have GDPR regulation, right, which talks about the privacy issue, data privacy issue, and data abuse issue, and data confidentiality issue, and all other security issues with respect to data security, right? Uh, the Gen AI has to comply with GDPR guidelines, and that's not very easy, and that's a main blocker because even within EU bloc, different companies are on the different leaning on different sides, right? Some are advocating for Gen AI, some are completely saying that it would put data theft and data privacy a big concern, right? So GDPR is one thing where data privacy, data confidentiality, how data specifically in countries like Switzerland where data secrecy laws are very strict, right? They are not a big advocate of Gen AI, use of Gen AI, right? The other part is in your customer engagement or customer relationship, whenever you are using Gen AI, right? Again, it's a concern that some customers need to be taken on board. They need to give their specific permission, right, to be able to let the Gen AI deal with their data. So such kind of regulation is also going to come where customers will be empowered to take a call whether they want their data to be processed or to be handled by Gen AI, or they don't want, right? Because that is another thing. The other part in Gen AI is that within the broader set of organization, you if you see, right, the kind of automation which is happening and the kind of over reliance on Gen AI, like there's an area called you know prompt engineering, right? With the prompts, you train the Gen AI app or Gen AI capability to generate the kind of content you are looking for, right? But those people who are just training the Gen AI app may be facing an ethical dilemma. They might, because it would go against them. If you are today somebody is training a Gen AI app, he would be double minded whether tomorrow Gen AI would take his job. So he might train it in a different way so that it would be doomed to fail. So that is the kind of conflict of interest issues with dealing with Gen AI. Human intervention versus Gen AI need to be balanced, need to have a trade-off. And the other part is the ethical hacking issue. So there are a lot of hackers, right, who are even further in Gen AI, use of Gen AI in order to contain, in order to create fake content, in order to create fake transactions, in order to, maybe smooth the transactions, specifically on the anti-money laundering side. So there's a lot of ethical regulation or ethical rules that need to be set out for Gen AI to be not to be abused and to be rightly used in this strict sense. Yeah.
Right. So this is something, Ritesh, I would also like to hear from you as well, your thoughts.
Yeah, I think, thank you for asking this question. I think it's a minefield of risks. Uh, See, with AI ML itself, we did not know all the risks they posed. With generative AI, the field has been, the entire uncertainty has grown manifold. Some broad ideas I will want to share, which I have come across. First, as Sanjay very eloquently described, was the data privacy kind of a thing, especially in a regulated sector like financial services. And he mentioned about the GDPR. Uh,
Correct.
it's that you have, so besides the risk of data leakage from training data sets, AI/ML systems also have the capability of unmasking anonymized data through inference. That means from the behavior pattern of users, even though you don't give their exact address and name, they have the ability to unmask the identity of the user. Also, they seem to remember the information which was used in the training data set even after the data was used and discarded. So these are some things. And now when you look at organizations, how banks and financial institutions are trying to incorporate these Gen AI systems, if a financial institution, suppose it goes with a publicly available Gen AI system, and they integrate them as part of their operations. Now, these publicly available Gen AI systems, what they do, the default option is every customer has to opt in, and they have to share their data with the Gen AI system where there, which would be used for training the system. So there is a clear risk of leakage of sensitive financial information. Okay, and so that is why if you go to a publicly available Gen AI system today, they will give you a very clear disclosure that they cannot guarantee the security and confidentiality of your data. I have seen some of them. To mitigate that, of course, most of the financial institutions, they are trying to create what we call enterprise grade Gen AI systems of their own, because for them also this is a big risk. If you realize when ChatGPT was released in 2022, 6 or 7 of the biggest financial institutions in US, they actually banned the use of ChatGPT within their environment. So Goldman Sachs,
Right.
Morgan Stanley, Deutsche Bank
Right.
was there, of America were there. They were all, so data privacy, of course, is one big issue. From a regulatory perspective, the other big issue is, as Sanjay highlighted, about prompt engineering, which we call embedded bias. So the idea is that the computer system is systematically discriminating against a particular set of users because they have been trained on data like that. Now that goes against some of the financial regulations which are there in US and even in other jurisdictions where the regulator will tell you that you cannot systematically discriminate against certain community or certain sections.
Correct.
With GenAI, I think this embedded bias problem is even more because unlike traditional AI ML, which was getting trained on more numerical data, Gen AI is getting trained on more textual and other data formats, wherein that bias is inherently a part of that data set. Okay, so to me, this is this embedded bias is one big problem. Then we have been talking about the synthetic data, which Sanjay also said. So with Gen AI, the use of synthetic data is going to accelerate manifold. Is one
Right.
big which I see as happening. Now, if so much of synthetic data is being used, I don't know the kind of risks it might bring in terms of bias, in terms of accuracy, which will be used with this synthetic data. So that is the third thing. And of course, with deep learning itself, we had the problem of explainability. For the regulated deep learning models had become like a black box. They did not know why a particular thing was shown or why a particular outcome was coming out from the AI model. With
Right.
Gen AI, that explainability problem has been further enhanced, because at the core of Gen AI, they are using a very diverse set of data and tools. So it makes it very, very difficult to exactly map as to why the Gen AI is giving a particular outcome and not some other outcome. So systems will become, I think, kind of opaque. This to me is a big regulatory challenge as to whether they can explain or not. Cybersecurity, as Sanjay mentioned, of course, the way I see this is that with Gen AI, phishing attacks and other cybersecurity attacks might become even more sophisticated. You already are facing the problem of deep fakes. We are
Right.
already seeing film actresses, Alia Bhatt, Rashmika Mandana, all deep fakes are being created these days. And I think it's a matter of not, it's a matter of if, it's a matter of when before these tools are deployed to target large financial institutions, because that's where money lies. I've read about uh, some of the Gen AI models being very susceptible to what we call jailbreaking attacks, in which
Right.
you can find prompts in certain ways, in certain word sequences or sentences, that you can bypass the Gen AI's existing, filters or constraints, and you can even insert malicious data in that Gen AI. So, I mean, as the system will get complex, the sophistication of attacks will also get complex. And finally, I think from a regulatory perspective, regulator has this, or regulator should have this concern that if everyone is relying upon Gen AI for financial investment advice, for risk management, there could be a huge homogeneity, or what we call herd mentality. If everyone is
Right.
having same Gen AI, so there would be some kind of a homogeneity in risk management, in trading decisions in the market, which I think could be a big source of systemic risk buildup. So to me, these are data privacy, embedded bias, explainability, cybersecurity, and financial stability, because I think these are some key regulatory challenges which they would want to address.
Many, absolutely, absolutely. Very, very well summarized, both Sanjay and Ritesh. So, I mean, going to the next actually question that I would understand is like, what are the broader Gen AI applications and use cases in various financial subdomains like risk, compliance, trading, etc. Again, I mean, just to start with, we will go to Sanjay first.
Yeah, so maybe as I just alluded to, one of the main area where Gen AI could be appropriately used is, pricing of illiquid, assets or illiquid securities or illiquid derivatives, right? So in investment banking, specifically in market making activities, there's a lot of price discovery algorithm, right? So the market making activities conducted by investment bank is all about discovering the price of something which is not that liquid, which is not that traded in the market. The depth in the market is quite low, right? So for such things, we could use Gen AI in order to generate such kind of bid and ask spreads, right? Hypothetically, which could give us a sense of what kind of price would be more appropriate, like for a initial IPO or a FPO, or maybe even because many of these investment bank are then giving advice to under their M&A, giving advice to different firms, what is the P multiple, or what is the the bid ask spread for different kind of securities, as well as what kind of initial listing price they should go with to hit the market capital markets. So that is one area which could be further enhanced, because anytime, most of these advice are based on some trading, generating some kind of liquidity by taking some kind of synthetic position in the market to get an idea what kind of price a particular security would be traded at in the future, right? So that is one area. Scenario generation and reverse stress testing is another area. So as we all know that the way we have been doing stress testing based on a scenario which is uh, comes in the form of some narrative from various regulators or from internal our econometric team. So there's a narrative to the scenario, and we adopt that scenario by applying converting them into some kind of a macroeconomic shocks, right, which
Right.
get translated into risk vector, blah blah blah. Now there's a new area of stress testing, not new, but it's been for quite some time, but relatively new in terms of adoption, that which is called reverse stress testing, where generally by looking at the balance sheet of a firm, right, first of all the vulnerabilities are identified where the balance sheet is concentrated, on which asset classes or liabilities the balance sheet is concentrated, what are the vulnerabilities, like where are the correlation covariances within the balance sheet, right? uh, and then a gen AI can generate a scenario which could lead to the biggest hit to such kind of a balance sheet. So it would rather make a customized stress testing kind of scenario for that particular firm, capturing its idiosyncrasy rather than adopting one size fit all kind of a scenario by everyone, right? So that's another area, reverse stress testing. If some kind of a scenario could be generated based on the vulnerability of the financial statements of that financial institution. So that is another area. And the other area is where I see the possibility of gen AI leaving its footprint is climate and sustainability risk. Because Gen AI is any which way, as Ritesh said, is very capable of generating imaging data, textual data, speech signals, all kind of unstructured or modern day data. And for climate and sustainability risk, any which way, most of the banks are very short on such kind of data. So with the a little corpus which is available coming from the geo satellite data, right, we could use that corpus to train the algorithm to then generate multiple such different variations of that particular data, which could then be used to build climate and sustainability risk models. So that's to my mind another area. And obviously the automation bit, I think Ritesh has well covered that. The low hanging fruit is mainly in terms of leveraging gen AI for automation of processes, simplification of processes, rationalization of processes, and how to maintain a good balance between the human and the generative AI application at the same time within each processes. Yeah. So maybe that's broadly what I think are maybe for some of the low hanging fruits and high hanging fruits of gen AI when it comes to BFSI sector. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Ritesh, anything you would like to add on this?
I mean, just a few things. So, I think the point which Sanjay made on ESG was an excellent point. In fact, probably we should include the ESG fallout as part of a regulatory risk as well, because uh, across the globe today, the central bank or the regulator is asking the banks to think about their ESG guidelines. And even in India, RBI already has started the banks to, they're asking banks to start focusing on ESG and include ESG as part of their decision-making process. They are part of their credit risk appraisal process, their risk management process. So I think there was a news article a couple of days ago where SBI has already started doing this. The major ESG fallout here is that when you start training these large language models and foundational models, that could result in exceeding the carbon emission norms. That could have a huge ESG breach. Now, coming back to the original question as to where you see most of the use cases being generated, we already discussed two of them: automation and
Right.
so even in automation, I think customer services, especially when you combine these with natural language processing and Gen AI capabilities, we are practically seeing 24/7 chatbots, which will be able to engage with customers, customer onboarding will be done. I mean, I read a word phrase somewhere that we would be moving towards what we call conversational banking, the way people used to bank earlier. Now,
True.
right now, the have become very informal, very tech oriented. It will be conversational banking, where again someone will take you through each step to human conversation. That is one thing. Uh, Personalization, as I told you, that is going to me. That's going to be a big area for banks, investment banks, wealth managers, insurance companies, where they will be able to do mass scale personalization, which was not possible till now. So, uh, there
True.
are institutions like Square in US. They are a payment service provider. They have already started doing these things where they give option to their customers that they can generate content for their own businesses using Square's platforms. So this personalization is a big thing. And of course, automation is a third big thing. In automation, I think anything which is a part of the middle office and back office, none of the activities, according to me, will remain untouched. Whether it is, Sanjay mentioned about stress testing, reverse stress testing, where it is credit decisioning. Denial explanation to me is a very interesting area in which, if you have to build trust in the AI systems, if you can give a plausible reason to the customer as to why their application was not accepted or it was rejected, that I think would be a good help to customers. It would help create this society's trust in AI. Fraud detection, already most of the big banks, they have started using these Gen AI algorithms for fraud detection. And as Sanjay mentioned about the that generative adversarial network, where they use, where they have two algorithms. One is the real data, and then you have the synthetic data, and they try to figure out which is the fake and which is the real one. So that GAN has a huge application in fraud detection, especially given the amount of credit card frauds we have these days. KYC, AML, regulatory compliance, asset portfolio management, quantitative trading, legacy software maintenance. I mean, we would be surprised, but even today, when we keep talking about Gen AI, Python, and all such fancy terms, a
Right.
large of the bank's systems, they still run on COBOL. A lot of core banking and other things still run on COBOL, which is like a 60, 70-year-old. I mean, COBOL people used to work with in 1980s, but still a lot of that banking code, core banking code is written in COBOL. Now, where do you find people who can maintain COBOL code? No one learns COBOL these days. So there also, I think GenAI can be vastly useful. So there are a whole lot of activities under these broad themes where use cases can be created.
Yeah, wonderful. Those are like very insightful, and only can come from somebody who has worked with the bank in a very deep way, right? So, continuing on the discussion further, right? So, this is to you, Ritesh. On that note, I mean, we have discussed about like the general areas where we are applying AI in finance, but maybe like uh, a little bit more specific. Can you exemplify or rather exemplify few Gen AI products and solutions, and maybe what unique capabilities they offer for the BFSI domain?
Uh, okay, let me try to think how to answer this. See, as I told you, at the heart of any Gen AI is some kind of a transformer model. That is the
Absolutely.
crux of the Gen AI transformer model, NLP, and then you have these large language models. The basic idea behind large language models is it can predict what words are likely to come next in a sequence. So it's like even now you have these auto completion in your email and in your text messages, but they are based on say a Markov model where they try to predict what word you should use. Now you have these generative pre-trained that a GPT in chat GPT. A GPT stands for a generative pre-trained transformer. It's nothing but a artificial neural network model which can produce a sequence of words, it can produce code, it can produce any other data based on the prompt that you have inputted. And there have been these various iterations of these generative pre-trained transformers. So you had GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3. Now you have GPT-4. Based on these, people have created a whole lot of Gen AI tools. So if you ask me today, what is Chat GPT? For a layman, a Chat GPT is nothing but a chatbot. It's a chatbot. It's just that that chatbot is able to use AI. It is able to use NLP. It is able to use LLM to communicate with its audience. And people have created other generative AI tools. So there is something called a Bing creator. You have DALI 2, which is there for image. You have Dream Studio by a company
Right.
called Stability AI. There is an AI time machine. So there are so many tools uh, which have come, which have been created. The basic idea is, if I can take you through probably some of them, Chat GPT is there. The basic idea behind Chat GPT is that it can create text which resembles human language, and it can engage you in conversation which feels to be natural and authentic. So use cases, customer support. So in customer support, you are using Chat GPT. Then there is a very popular AI assistant these days, AI writing assistant. It's called Scribe. A lot of people are using that to create, customized uh, documentation, reports to summarize data. That is there. Then you have I've come across a tool called Alpha Code. The basic idea of Alpha Code is they are going to use generative AI to empower code development. So they will help you writing code in bug resolution. You have that GitHub Copilot, which is the Microsoft thing, that is there. GPT-4, of course, has come. Then you have Google's Bard. But when it comes to BFSI, I think instead of using these in the off-the-shelf manner, companies might actually want to go for their own, I would say, customized form. So, for example, Capital One and JP Morgan Chase, they have already developed their in-house AI-powered fraud and suspicious activity detection system. Morgan
Okay.
Stanley Wealth, I was reading, have collaborated with OpenAI, and they are leveraging their own data source to assist financial advisors. Because somehow, when it comes to BFSI, my understanding is that training the model on your proprietary data gives far more relevant results than simply training it on data available across the internet. So Bloomberg has come up with their own version of GPT, where they have trained Bloomberg's proprietary data and whatever historical records they have, and they seem to suggest that it is much more effective in answering financial queries, in helping you make sense of financial data compared to a GPT which is trained on the general public internet. So these are the few products. Tools will keep coming. I mean, most of the tools in BFSI, I think, would be customized as per the business workflow in terms with your data privacy and cybersecurity norms. I don't see too many. In fact, for BFSI segment, I think usage of public Gen AI system would be a risk. So probably they would discourage it. But again, there are so many, for example, DALI 2, where you can create these images. They have a lot of applications in marketing. So these are some of the tools that are there, and a lot many more are coming up as companies keep getting funding.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, Sanjay, I mean, would you like to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty much covered by Ritesh. The only part is that obviously some of these products which are coming from the stable of financial sector and fintech companies, as Ritesh said, are specifically trained on financial corpus or bag of words or whatever you call, uh, right? Which is quite different, right? And anyway, a pre-trained chat GPT or a transformer could not be adopted, or a pre-trained NLP or large language model could not be adopted, right? So with each bank having the different set of policy framework, compliance, compliance, governance processes, their own set of parlance or terminology of words which they use, right? So it would be specifically the product development would be on the institution level rather than blindly adopting something which is already there in the market. So many banks, like I have seen Ritesh has pointed out Capital One and others, JPMC, but many banks have started exploiting the idea of FinGPT, which is
Right.
specifically built on financial corpus of words and generate text, generate conversations, generate maybe other documentation paragraph, or maybe some kind of a writing scripts for from the financial corpus, from the for specific financial corpus, and that could then be further seen very specialized for different risk, compliance, treasury, or maybe finance, different areas of the bank, right? So it would not just be one such GPT. Compliance would have its own GPT, the risk would have its own, finance would have its own, treasury operations would have its own, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Carrying on. So next question that actually I would like to ask is like, and this is we'll start with Sanjay on this, right? So what kind of data set and data mining methods are used for GenAI capability development?
Okay, so that's where to my mind, the buck starts, because contrary to the normal domains, other generic domains, the financial domains has a lot of data constraints, right? So the data set which they would like to harness going forward would be definitely be the textual data, and specifically the social networking data, right? The tweets coming
Right.
from social networking, and different analysts and different market pundits, observers expressing their opinions on the results of a company, or forward guidance on a company, right? P multiple, those kind of things which are expressed specifically on social networking sites, right? And that could be used to build a sentiment indicator whether the market at a given point in time is bearish or bullish or neutral stance, right? And the idea is that most of the trading application have now been looking at how they could adopt or incorporate a sentiment indicator or sentiment indicator into their trading app, which could generate further maybe triggers, whether they should take a position or they should wind up a position, wind down a position, right? So this sentiment indicator would require any bank to mine into a lot of these textual social networking data, even sometimes images and all, right? Which could specifically, it's not even text, it's not even normal grammar, English grammar, which we are to an extent familiar with. It's just tweets or some kind of maybe emojis, or maybe those kind of things which which you have to train the machine, or maybe to understand what that emoji means, whether a thumbs up means a bullish market, or a thumbs down means a bearish market, or is it always the case, or so on and so forth, right? The other part is that within the credit scorecards, a lot of focus is on building the lifestyle score specifically for retail clients, right? So there a lot of focus is how to do web scraping and pull out the data from your Facebook profile, from your different social profiles, social networking profiles, where we could get an idea what kind of lifestyle spending you are doing, what is your lifestyle pattern, and what kind of lifestyle score could be associated with you, right? That could be built into your scorecard, or in some of the like FICO scores or experience scores which are assigned to a borrower or a obliger before a decision is taken whether to lend or not to lend, would carry another unique variable, which is basically lifestyle score, right? There, as I said, maybe it would be a lot of focus to how to process the image data, pictures data, or maybe whatever pictures you post on your social networking site, images or videos you post on your social updates you post on your social networking sites, how to deduce some kind of a lifestyle score from that, right? The third area is obviously climate and sustainability risk, where a lot of uh, low orbiting geo satellite data is being sent, and how to process that kind of data, right, for seeing the physical risk, as well as the where that physical risk is coming from, right? Whether it's means a flood in the river Rhine, or it means some kind of a other calamitic situation, which rising sea levels and all. So that kind of signal of the data, that is also harness a lot. So with all these kind of modern day data, unstructured data, non-numerical data being harnessed, right, it will automatically feed into majorly into through large language models or convolutional neural networks. It will be feeded into Gen AI capability, because it would not stop just at as Ritesh said, that it is not just about prediction and classification task, which is a low hanging fruit, and which is the first generation algorithms which are built on this unconventional data. But it would further to get propagated to a Gen AI, right, where maybe Ritesh has very elaboratively covered how what the product would be like, and what at the center piece of it would be sitting a transformer which would be doing all this task, and maybe some kind of then generative capability out of it. Yeah, so that's maybe what I think. So right, so all the kind of data set which we are to seeing today would be textual data, speech data, image data, right? Your sensor data, sensory data, geopolitical signal not geopolitical, geosatellite signal data, IoT data, all these the various form of data is mined to get and various uh, we have specifically designed AI/ML algorithms which are good at mining these kind of data set, like natural language processing is good at mining textual data, or maybe the CNN convolutional neural network could be put to image data, so on and so forth. So there are specific algorithms which could be used to mine this kind of a data, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, anything, Ritesh, you would like to add? Sanjay has already
I think that
elaborated on the.
we have talked about most of the things. Just a couple of points. I think this availability of data is already becoming a big issue. So ChatGPT, essentially, they indiscriminately scraped data from public internet. A lot of that data was public, but a lot of the data was copyrighted. So you're already seeing publishers, news channels, movie studios in US, they are suing OpenAI that they have used their data, proprietary data, without their permission. So where will this data, a lot of data, come from? Uh, I think we are going to see a more structured approach to this. I recently read about a non-profit organization. It's called Allen Institute for AI. It's called AI2, Allen Institute for AI. They are a non-profit organization, and they want to have a sustainable AI future. So recently they have come up with a data set called DOLMA. It's DOLMA, and that data set is huge. It is supposed to have 3 trillion tokens, and that they are providing to Gen AI companies, that you can train your models on this. Further, uh, while Sanjay mentioned the uses of geosatellite, another geography specific thing, I think the solution provider, Gen AI solution provider, would have to address the issue of language, regional or local language based data to train any text based generative AI. To me, that's a very, very exciting uh, development in Gen AI. You're already seeing a lot of India specific large language models which are supporting Indian languages. So for example, Ola came up with this Krutrim.ai, which is their, I think it's their voice based AI assistant that they are essentially trained on Indian languages. You have the Bhashini project from Government of India. So a this geography or language specific data that is there, then you will, I think you will see organizations which will come up providing their data sets for large language models to train upon them. And finally, as you said, synthetic data, a lot of role will be played by synthetic data, as Sanjay also mentioned. Uh, at the same time, I feel uh, data set is only part of the issue. What we are also going to see is increased reliance on more complex deep learning architectures. So data availability, of course, is one thing, the size of the data set, diversity of data set, but the complexity of the deep learning architecture. So we already have spoken about generative adversarial network. The whole idea is the generator tries to fool the discriminator, and in the process, they learn how to generate more realistic output. So you have an image Gen AI tool called StyleGAN, which is actually based on this GAN architecture. Then there have been a set of tools called diffusion models. They came up with at Stanford and Berkeley around 10 years ago. What they do, they iteratively try to refine their output, and the end expectation is that the model will learn to generate new data samples which resembles the original data in the training data set. So diffusion model, again, a lot of text to image generative AI tools, they work on these diffusion models. And then of course you have the transformer architecture. So one part is the data set, raw data where you are going to get. The other thing is synthetic data. With synthetic data, the problem is how do you get over the inherent biases or limitations in the original data set itself. So we are also going to see, lot many more complex uh, deep learning architectures that will be supporting the generation of this synthetic data. So transformer model, diffusion model, and the GAN, they would also play a major role as part of the tech stack.
Yeah, absolutely. Very elaborative. Thanks, both of you. Actually, it was like quite informative. Uh, Going to like next question on this actually. Like again, this I would again like to start with Sanjay. So, what is the technology stack or infrastructure requirements or for Gen AI capability development? I mean, if you can start answer that.
Okay, let me maybe I'm first of all a disclaimer, not a technocrat by any on this panel. Ritesh is a better technocrat than me. Believe me that in that, right? So still I would try to give it a go, right? So there are, as far as architecture is concerned, I could see it in three ways, right? The first layer, this is a multi-layered architecture capability which you would require to dole out for Gen AI, right? The first layer would be specifically would be infra layer, infrastructure layer, right? So infrastructure layer would provide all the computational power and computational capability. It would have the cloud platforms like the AWS or maybe the Google cloud platform or Microsoft Azure, right? So that kind of elements to it. It would then also have some kind of besides the cloud platform. It would have some kind of how to say uh, the ingestion layer which will ingest the data, like big data platforms like Hadoop, Scala, Spark, all these big data platforms. So the infra layer would have the big data platforms, the cloud platforms, the hosting platforms, all this kind of things. And then it would have some kind of a processing power, right, which is provided by multi-core processor or parallel computing or distributed computing using the NVIDIA or AMD, very powerful GPUs and multiprocessors, right? So and the other element of it is networking, right? How to different elements of this infrastructure communicate along with each other, right? So there are three things within sitting in the infrastructure layer, right? One would be the cloud platforms or big data platforms, right? And then maybe the computing power which is coming from the AMD or NVIDIA multiprocessor GPUs, which require very high power and some kind of distributed or parallel computing. And then the third element would to my knowledge is the networking, how the networking technology make the different elements of infrastructure communicate with each other. The second layer would be the model layer, right? The modeling layer, where we would have all the kind of modeling elements, like you would have a TensorFlow, which is a library or an environment, which is sort of not a library but an environment. TensorFlow or PyTorch, which is an environment which allows you to build generative AI or build GAN, generative adversarial networks, or build variational auto encoders or some kind of transformers. So this would be some kind of environment, development environment, right? Which we call PyTorch, which as on date we use PyTorch, or maybe the other one maybe. So uh, that kind of environment, as well as some kind of a heavyweight lifting libraries like scikit-learn, or some which have all the functions and the utilities which could be used by everyone. Instead of being creating their own functions and utilities, they could leverage on the already created functions and utilities to create an algorithm, to create a model like GAN model, or maybe variational auto encoders or transformers, which Ritesh was referring to, right? The last layer would be the front end layer, the application layer, where the user will interact, right? As a user, you, like, if you are given a prompt, right, you will interact with the Gen AI application or Gen AI algorithm to train them to have a conversation, to over the time to build some kind of customize or personalize interactions or exchanges of information with the Gen AI. That might, to my knowledge, would involve some application of reinforcement learning, uh, because reinforcement learning allows somebody, any algorithm, uh, to learn how to behave in a real world environment, like even the self-driven, auto-driven cars, autonomous cars, they get trained on a real life scenario, how they should be driving through various terrains, countryside, or cityscape, through reinforcement learning, which is a action, kind of a replay mechanism, right? So that kind of algorithm, right, would that kind of reinforcement learning will uh, train the generative AI to behave like a human, right? Or at least pretend to behave like a human in the real world. So there would be these three layers to the infrastructure with different components to it. The infrastructure layer, right? Rather, the architectural layer. The first architectural layer is the infrastructure layer. The middle layer would be the modeling layer or algorithmic layer. The last layer would be the application layer, right? So
Yeah.
maybe that's what my limited understanding is. Maybe Ritesh, if you would like to add something to that, right?
Yes, Ritesh. I mean, anything you would like to add,
I think
please?
it's been discussed quite elaborately by Sanjay. Just a couple of things where I would probably want to add my view. As he correctly said, that these are the three layers. You have the application, you have the model, you have the infrastructure, and then you have the tech stack, in which you have the ML models, the GANs, the transformers, you have programming languages, you have libraries. Where I would want to add here is, how does it probably vary, the Gen AI architecture, how does it vary compared to a traditional or extent AI ML architecture? So in the traditional ML architecture, what do we do? You get data, you do data pre-processing, you clean up the data, you pre-process that for analysis. Then you do what we call feature engineering, where you extract important features that you are going to use as part of the model. Then you train and tune the model on those data, and finally you do deployment. That's how the traditional ML architecture does. There you have ML frameworks, you have Keras, you have Theano, you have ML APIs, software development kits, you have databases like SQL Server, Oracle, and then you have the ML Ops, which is used for deployment, automated deployment within the enterprise environment. So you have things like Jenkins is there, you have Docker is there. That's traditionally how it happens in AI ML world. Probably what we are going to do differently in the Gen AI world is, of course, data pre-processing will be there, the first step. But then instead of doing a feature engineering, now you are going to do a prompt engineering. where you would be
Correct.
designing the prompts that will guide the AI in generating the desired output. That is the second stage. Then you will do fine tuning of the foundational or the large language model. So essentially that is where the fine tuning will happen. And finally, you will do deployment and monitoring. The packages are slightly different as per my understanding. So the first one is when you are doing this Gen AI orchestration or coordination, you have these packages called LangChain. I have come across some of them. LangChain is there. There is something called Llama Index that is there. Then when it comes to LLM models, of course, you have OpenAI, you have Anthropic. That is the LLM model or the model. In case of database, now we are not talking about a relational database like SQL server. SQL server, we are probably talking about something like a vector database now. So Pinecone is there. You have a database called VV8 that is there. And finally, you will have, instead of ML ops, you will have LLM ops. Instead of traditional ML ops, you have ML ops. There is something called a package called prompt layer, Helicon. So these are the different packages, because the complexity of data and what you actually want to do with data, that is going to be different. But otherwise, what Sanjay said pretty much crystallizes how it will be done on a high level basis in 3 layers.
Wonderful. All right. So now a very important question. So what are the core competencies or skill sets that one needs to acquire I mean, if somebody wants to make looking or rather looking for a career in Gen AI? Maybe I'll start with Ritesh on this.
3-4 things, because you have to identify what Gen AI is based on, and you have to create that as your core competency. Okay, so now in Gen AI world, unlike traditional coding, you don't, or traditional machine learning, you don't need to be an expert in statistics and all. That is not required. Good if you have it. The key skills to my mind is you have to be good at NLP, or natural language processing, because that is crucial to understand how a Gen AI system will work. Number one, it will also help you interact with the LLM model and also to build the LLM model. So NLP is a crucial thing. You need to be proficient in one of the programming languages, typically Python. Python and its libraries, like Sanjay mentioned, TensorFlow is there and PyTorch are there. These are again a key skill requirement. Then you have to be very, very conversant in terms of working with the large language model, because that is the bread and butter. So you have, that is again a core skill. I see a lot of job profiles coming up where the job profile would be about prompt engineering. So essentially, when it comes to prompt engineering, I wouldn't like to frame it in terms of you have to generate prompts. I think it's an optimization role where you are saying that how do I design my prompts in such a fashion that the capability of the AI system gets optimized, so that I am able to generate effective and relevant and accurate responses.
Absolutely.
If you know how to build AI chatbots, I think that there's going to be a huge market for that. Image processing skills, optional, but probably in some domains, if you want to work with those kind of companies, it might be very useful. And of course, deep learning. So core skills to me are programming language Python, or any other programming language. In case of Python, PyTorch and TensorFlow. NLP, that is a core skill. Prompt engineering, that is again a key skill, a critical skill according to me. And working with deep learning. These 4 to me are basic requirements if you want to have a long-term success in this field. I think Sanjay would be will be able to enlighten us more on that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, would like please, Sanjay. I mean, if you can add on that.
No, I think that's all. Maybe I would, for the sake of maybe just adding, I would not. Most of it is already adequately covered by Ritesh, and I think that's the case. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. So then, like, let's go to the next question that I would like to put up, which is like, can you please throw some light on the Gen AI specific career choices and job role families in the broader realm of BFSI and fintech sector? We would again start with Ritesh on this.
Okay, I really am not very aware about what the job roles will be. I will try to answer in a logical fashion. See, one way would be the specific job role that you become a prompt engineer. You know, you can work with large language models, you have NLP skills. That is one way to look at it. I think more critical way to look at that is to realize that going forward, every role that an organization has will have some kind of interaction with AI or Gen AI, and then to
True.
figure out where do I fit in. So I would broadly classify these as four type of roles. The exact nature of the role, its responsibilities, the job description, they may vary from organization to organization. One set is the job roles that are going to build the AI systems. So these would be the tech specialist people who will create and monitor those AI models, that they will leverage the deep learning capabilities and the technical part. You build the AI model. Then there would be people who would be shaping the AI model. There, I think you will need functional experts, domain experts, who will be directing the AI operations to deliver business outcomes, and who will be taking care of the fact that how that AI output is getting integrated into my business process. So just like you had that business analyst kind of a role, probably an overlap with that, not a very tech role. Then there would be people who are going to use these AI models. These would be the consumers. They will be working with the output from the AI models. They will be interpreting the data. They will be interpreting the content, and they will be trying to deliver based on that content. They will be trying to deliver value to customers. There you will have a different set of people who will be working with whether this data is relevant for my customer, how relevant it is, how can I make it better, and also the issues of governance, ethics. There will be a whole thing around that will develop around governance, ethics, malpractices that is there. And finally, as I said, roles that will govern the AI. So these will be a group of specialists who will monitor that whatever AI output is there, is it being used in a safe and ethical manner. So people who are going to build the AI, people who are going to shape the AI, that means integrate the AI with the business process, people who are going to be consumers of that AI, or who are going to use the AI model to service the customer, and finally people who are going to ensure that the AI is governed well. I think these are broadly four broad roles that we are going to see in the world of AI and Gen AI in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. Sanjay, if you can add to that.
No, I think Ritesh has covered well. The specific roles generally where I could see like the titles, because generally people want to be very objective, right? But things are not that objective, right? How they're evolving, right? Even we are at the receiving end of the same, right? So there would be data engineering roles, what maybe I suppose where which would be specialist or some kind of techno people who would be sitting in the infrastructure layer and provisioning that infrastructure, right, for the adoption of Gen AI, right, be it some kind of experts in these cloud platforms, big data platforms, all these engineering bits, right, as well as maybe the networking bit, or maybe some kind of computing power, how to enhance the computing power, how to do the distributed computing or parallel computing or multi-threading. These are the engineering rules, right, which would in general be Gen AI rules. And Gen AI require more so because we have a tsunami of data there, right? So there would be we need to have more capability built out, specifically for Gen AI. The middle layer, modeling layer, would, to my understanding, would be a bit of two kind of a roles. One would be a pure data scientist or a AI algo designer role, who would be somebody who is know the methodology, right, statistics. Those statistics doesn't have that much of a role, but as Ritesh said that say for example some of the mathematics or statistical part which is related to like uh, Monte Carlo, Markov chain, right, MCMC, right, how it is used for sequential modeling, right. So there would be some kind of a data scientist or a AI ML algo designer who understand the methodology behind AI ML, who would be sitting in the middle layer, who would make a choice, call the shots, what kind of uh, you know architecture should be adopted, be it GAN, be it auto encoders, or what kind of transformers, or what are different variants of that, what would go into the design of those kind of methodology, design of those kind of algorithms, all of that. So that would be making those kind of choices. And then there would be second kind of role, which maybe I think Ritesh rightly said, would be a business analyst, typical business analyst kind of role, who would converse with the business, right, to gather their requirements and pass it on to the main algo designers or data scientists, so that maybe they will get a throughput on the what is the business view, or what are the business requirements specific to use cases or problem sets, right? And then maybe obviously be business analyst kind of role would make sure that how it is implemented through an agile life cycle or whatever, right? Then the last would be what Ritesh already covered, would be somebody who would be using the user application user layer, where somebody would be sitting and even optimizing the prompts, rather than just using the prompts, not to generate the prompts, but optimizing the prompts to get effectiveness out of Gen AI algorithms, as well as maybe have a feedback mechanism, to and fro feedback mechanism from the actual consumers of data, or consumers of output, or users of output, to the Gen AI, right? In terms of how it could be trained for the future, what are the enhancement opportunities, how it could be further evolved, right, to be finally reach a level where maybe it could be fully reliable. And that last layer would also then take care of the privacy, security, all these governance and regulatory compliance, GDPR, all these issues as well. Yeah. So yeah. So broadly, mainly, more or less, what Ritesh said, but in different terms, right? Just that.
Absolutely. I mean, so that actually almost answers my next question. But if you want to add anything, Sanjay, on this, maybe I mean some more things on like generative AI specific career choices and job role families, mostly in broader realm of BFSI and fintech.
No, I think that's what it has. But anything maybe specific domain to domain, it might be. We have already talked about multiple use cases, like wealth management, asset management, even portfolio management. Uh, so all these where the Gen AI could do the job, right? Right, to manage the wealth investments portfolios, right, where these roles would be created most likely, right, as well as few trading, algorithmic trading, if they could be embedded with how to generate a strategy on the real time, right, when they're doing high frequency trading or algorithmic trading. I can only think of that use case, not that I have ever come across how to in the real time generate a strategy which could maybe take care of the changing market microstructures, right? So those kind of things would come in different forms, different subdomains, different specific areas, but broadly the role sets or the career pathing would be more or less the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Ritesh, anything you would like to add?
I think I had already, whatever understanding was, I already shared it. So this is really elaborate.
Sure, sure. Okay. Maybe a little bit of a repeat, but just like if you can elaborate a little bit more on how to prepare oneself to be a Gen AI expert in the BFSI and fintech domain, Sanjay.
Okay, as maybe rightly pointed out by Ritesh, that one has to focus more on the NLP part and the how to mine the textual data, right, and the speech data, right. uh, they could maybe start with some kind of not only generative problems, but some kind of a classification or prediction problems, which could be text classification, or maybe transcription problems, text language transcription problems, because that in itself provide a good foot into the door, right? How you go about understanding the generative models, right? Because that is the starting point, right? So large language models, NLP, if somebody could you know be thoroughly understanding and building base there, right, they would obviously, the natural progression would be for them to understand then these generative models. The second part is again the deep learning broadly, right? The area of maybe the deep neural networks, and specifically the some of the convolutional neural networks, or maybe recurrent neural network, like how recurrent neural network, like long short term memory, or the gated recurrent unit, it does the job of sequential processing. And sequential processing, any of the data, speech, video transcription, these problems are sequential problems, right? So, and which is again the underlying methodology is based on Markov chains, right? So if somebody would understand that neural network architecture, as well as what methodology is it is based on, right, methodological framework it is based on, that would help them in making a direct link to generative AI, right? And more advanced networks like GANs, or variational auto encoders, or transformers, or many of these which are directly used for generative AI, right? And the third aspect is for you to be getting prepared, you need to focus on uh, a programming language, and as well as the programming language, not only just programming language, but how to deploy. So front to back development of a model, right? How to deploy that model into some kind of infrastructure, what are the deployment challenges, as well as how to integrate that into your applications, the user applications, or in a broader application space. So that kind of thing is also very important, because Gen AI applications, to my mind, are not like normal conventional AI applications which are easy to integrate, right? You got to integrate into your entire application space or ecosystem. So that is also the deployment or integration bit, how what goes into what are the considerations for that. So those kind of things would also be uh, put somebody in a good positioning, where they could at least showcase that they know what need to be done for Gen AI to be fruitfully adopted and seen in the real life, right? So all these things would come together, would make somebody well prepared for such careers. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, I mean, it has been like a very, very engrossing session, to be very honest. Like, but again, I mean, we are actually extending time a little bit. So maybe the next two questions, I mean, would like to hear summary from you, Sanjay, and maybe then summary from Ritesh also. I mean, to conclude before we go to the Q&A. So I'll combine the next two questions for you, Sanjay. Though this first part actually, I mean, briefly we have already covered, right? So in terms of Gen AI adoption for financial applications, can you highlight some low and high hanging fruits, which we have briefly mentioned? I would like to hear if anything you want to add. And also I would combine with what are the promising Gen AI cutting edge research areas capturing the interest of financial academicians and BFSI practitioners. So both, if you can like quickly answer and summarize.
Okay, so I'll be very short, and while answering this, the first is low hanging fruits, those which are already getting exploited, and many of the other firms are very eager to exploit those. Are maybe the area of compliance, right, which is very heavyweight lifting, right? The area of compliance, which include policy compliance, internal policy compliance, external regulatory compliance, audit, right? The auditory compliance activities, right? So all these various form of compliance, anti money laundering compliance, all these various form of compliance areas, which are the low hanging fruits, where many of the generative AI is being at least exploited, right? The other areas which come to my mind is where the interaction is very important, like uh, the HR, the or the legal counsel, right? Interaction, right? How they dig into how an HR, how something could be created which a Gen AI application could be created which can automatically screen the applications, the candidate application, and put forth the right candidates in front of the business, right? So that is another area. Legal counsel is another area within firm, right? Where a legal advisory generative AI capability could be built, right? So all these areas are low to medium hanging fruits which will see to fructify over maybe next 5 to 7 years, right? What I see, right? And become the real things in our in around us. The high hanging fruits would definitely be something like a well-trained wealth management and a private investment advisor, right? If it could completely replace the wealth management wealth managers or asset managers or private managers,
Right.
all of which require a degree of acceptance, regulatory acceptance, a degree of maybe customer acceptance, then only it will be fully adopted, as well as the very nuanced risk management area of portfolio risk, right? Scenario generation, stress testing, right? All of which they are the prominent research areas where maybe parallelly the research will keep continuing happening. And the explainable AI, so it is also maybe as Ritesh said that the how we could explain these black box models, the adoption of those very nuanced use cases are also dependent upon the advancement we make in the explainable area AI area, where we are trying a lot of game theory to explain the black box model like Shapley values or Shapley based explanation. But that is where it goes, right? The low hanging fruits or low to medium hanging fruits will anyway be exploited, but the high hanging fruits require some broader acceptance or broader enablers to finally get adopted or see the light through, right?
Wonderful. Okay.
Okay.
Um, Ritesh, anything you would like to say in summary?
I think the low high hanging fruit thing has been covered very eloquently by Sanjay. Just for the second part of your question in terms of the areas of research, the cutting edge
Right.
research that is happening. Okay, I'll just make points very quickly. The most visible integration that I see in terms of LLM is with the search experience. So the idea is already both Google and Microsoft Bing, they have brought in their own LLM model, the generative AI model, as part of the
Right.
search experience. The idea is tomorrow you have to go to search, then instead of typing in the whole thing, you just can interact with the system through natural language, and probably it will give you a much faster and a much more relevant answer.
Correct.
That is a very, very big technological breakthrough because a lot of web browsing actually starts with search. So if a Gen AI is able to replace even a part of that search, I think we are looking at a future where the interaction computers will not be through a keyboard or through any other mechanical or electronic device. It would be through natural language itself. To me, that is
Right.
a idea of how we make. So language would become the interface between the human and the machine. To me,
True.
that yeah. And secondly, the next active area is uh, while this entire craze of generative AI is going on and it will continue to go, people are extremely bothered about what is its environmental impact and what is its true cost. The whole, I would say, the life cycle cost of an LLM. So it will start right from you mine the ore from the earth, then you manufacture the chip, then you train it, and when you train it, I was reading somewhere, so normally they measure it in numbers of floating point operations per second. And for GPT-3 or GPT-4, that is equivalent to like 10 to the power 23 flops, which is akin to the number of stars in this entire universe. So what is energy impact? So once you have trained the model, then the model also has to work in terms of giving the output. all of this is going to have a huge impact in terms of energy requirement and environmental impact. Very similar to how we saw with crypto. With crypto, you would realize ultimately people said that the people who ran the crypto blockchain, it was a play on the cost of electricity. So in US, so a lot of you see where does most of the crypto mining happen in the world? You will be surprised to know Kazakhstan is a country where a lot of crypto mining happens because cheap power is available. Similarly, in US, a lot of places where cheap hydroelectric power was available became the center for hosting those data centers. So one, how to make language as the interface between human and machine using this whole Gen AI LLM based approach. And secondly, what is the true cost of all this technological progress that we are talking about? To me, that will be something which a researcher should be very, very interested in.
Right. Wonderful. Wonderful. So, gentlemen, it has been like I mean, very, very informative, right? So, I mean, we have like a few questions which we would go through, but like maybe you both have been speaking continuously for almost like 1.5 hours. So, just to give you a breather and also maybe to go through like some of the work that we have been doing at IIQF, we'll just maybe for 5 minutes we will mention about the work that we have been doing, and then we'll come to the Q&A if you both allow. Right. So very quickly to all, I mean, most of you already know about us. Just like I mean, very quick introduction. I mean, we at IIQF actually we have been pioneering education and training in the field of quantitative finance and financial engineering, risk management, algorithmic trading, and also in the areas of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we were founded by pioneers in India and top experts from the field of financial risk management, financial engineering, investment banking. Right. So we have been tirelessly promoting this field of quant and quant finance and advanced analytical fields of finance for more than 1.5 decades now. Right. So I mean, as a part of our endeavor, we have been uh, conducting like very deep rooted certificate programs in the field of financial engineering and all these areas, right? So anybody interested in like making a career in the advanced financial analytics, I mean, probably would find a course that fits their requirement. So just to brief you again, these are all weekend based live interactive session based courses. There's a course called Certificate Program in Financial Engineering for people who want to go into very deep quant profiles in the finance industry. Those who want to go into risk management, we have a course called Certificate Program in Quantitative Finance and Risk Management. If people who are interested in algorithmic trading, we have an end-to-end course on postgraduate program in algorithmic trading. Then coming to the AI/ML part of like finance. So I mean, now we have very deep courses in these areas as well. There's a course called Artificial Intelligence for Finance, which involves modules on deep modules on data science applications in finance, including your data visualization in Power BI, Tableau, and all that. We have modules in that course on machine learning for finance, studying about all the relevant machine learning models in supervised mode learning, unsupervised learning, deep learning, neural networks, and its applications in finance, right? And I mean, of course, these courses can be done modularized as well. If somebody only wants to learn the data science part, they can do only the data science as a separate certificate program. I mean, if somebody wants to learn only the machine learning aspects, they can do the machine learning for finance course as a separate module. If somebody wants to learn all of this, they can do the AI for finance course, which involves both this data science for finance and ML for finance. Also, as a part of the AI for finance course, you have 4 electives, right? So these electives are optional electives, which you can choose to specialize in one of the area. So there's an elective on AI for derivative valuation. There's an elective on AI for trading. There's an elective on AI for risk management, and then there's a course on generative AI for, or rather, a elective on generative AI for finance. Now, and we would be coming up on a course called AI for climate risk as well. So there is, I mean, something for everybody. I mean, in any area of finance you want to specialize in related to AI and ML. right? I mean, if you're doing an AI for finance course, as I said, these modules, one of them you can choose it to be your specialization. And of course, I mean, you can do multiple modules as well by registering separately. The good thing is, if somebody is very well versed with general data science and machine learning techniques, they can directly go into this elective modules. Any of them you can choose to do separately. I mean, you can do multiple of them as well, but you can choose to directly go into this elective modules, and this can be taken as separate certificate courses as well, right? So I mean, a lot of stuff for people who are actually are interested in like understanding about AI, ML, and all this relevant applications in finance. And since today's discussion is more on generative AI, so just to give you a little bit more idea on the generative AI for finance course that we have, right? So highlights of the course are like, first of all, this is a super specialization AI program covering the generative AI algorithmic design and application used for financial problems. Uh, it is very focused learning journey to cover the emergence of Gen AI based product solutions and design framework for BFSI and fintech subdomains. It has an insightful coverage on Gen AI organization, evaluation, trends, potential research areas for BFSI subdomains. It has extensive coverage for Gen AI adoption, considerations, challenges, and cautions, regulatory policy, legal, compliance, ethical, and all aspects. It provides very practical deep dive into AI models, Gen AI models, particularly methodology and mechanics like LLM, that is large language models, and transformer architectures. It is designed to deliver know-how on how BFSI financial use cases and applications across risk, compliance, fraud analytics, portfolio management, and others. What is the wider span coverage of financial use cases encompassing financial text generation, forecasting, anomaly detection, sentiment analysis, and others. And it has a rigorous live classroom-based lectures from our expert faculty panel constituting of BFSI industry subject matter experts, as with all our courses. And of course, there are some academic leading researchers as well. As with every of our course, it has practical hands-on learning through Python prototyping and implementation workshops on front to back model building and algorithmic training exercises, right? So it would render technical know-how on how BFSI and fintech industry would be using Gen AI application ecosystem, application architecture design, and the technology stack, right? So yes, and of course it will have BFSI industry mentor-led generative AI capstone projects and implementation white paper writing, right? Okay, I mean, this is the basic structure of the course highlights. It would be doing, I mean, we would be covering synthetic data generation, fraud detection and prevention, financial text generation, portfolio optimization, algorithmic trading applications, intelligent credit scoring, improved risk management. So these are the core highlight areas which we will be covering. I'm not going more into that. I mean, we can discuss one-on-one if anybody is interested, but just like to highlight the BFSI career roles which this one can target after doing this. I mean, you can be a generative AI researcher, generative AI data scientist, generative AI engineer, developer, generative AI project manager, generative AI product designer, and product owner, right? So very quickly, I mean, I'm not going deep into this. I mean, in our long 1.5 decades of journey, uh, there have been many students and professionals, particularly professionals who have done our course and then have utilized these courses to build a very strong career in quant, risk, ML, and other advanced areas of financial analytics, right? So, I mean, you can just to I mean, so give you an overall idea about how we can you can leverage our courses to make a career of your own as well in the advanced financial analytics industry, and also in ML and data science areas of finance, right? Okay, so not going more into all this, right? So yeah, I mean, yeah, this is something I would like to elaborate for people who are looking for jobs or maybe career improvement in this field. So I mean, we do have a strong support on the placements. So anybody doing our course, their journey with us starts from absolute beginning, starting with a career counseling when they have inquired for any course with us, right? Understanding their overall background, suggesting what kind of career they can partake, and what kind of courses they should be doing. So essentially, this mentorship and guidance is done by industry experts. Then once you have done the course, there is a dedicated placement support team with a very strong network of industry association with who helps in every step, starting from resume building, profile improvement, placing your things in LinkedIn properly, right? And then approaching the industry for particular roles that they think you have the best chance of getting interview calls from, and then arranging your interview calls. So it's a very structured process and the entire learning and career journey that actually you can have with us in case you get interested in doing any of our courses, right? Target companies and all, everybody knows. I mean, not going very deep into that. Profiles and roles. I mean, this is a very short list. In the last 1.5 decades, practically everybody, every company working in quant, risk analytics, machine learning have been, I mean, we have some association one way or the other, right? So essentially, it's been a long journey, and we also ourselves are all from the quant industry, right? Yeah, and this is something I would like to mention. I mean, as a part of our endeavor to promote education, I mean, to promote the quant finance and financial engineering and the related areas in India, right? I mean, we have been working with a lot of educational institutions and in promoting this field. I mean, all the major institutions, and some of them, to name some of them, IIT Madras, IIT Roorkee, IIT Bombay, BITS Pilani, NITI, which is now IIM Mumbai, right? So these are I mean, some of the institutes we work with many of them to promote this field in India, right? All right, so now this is like the your contact information. You can visit our website iiqf.org in case you get interested in learning about any of our courses. One of the contact numbers you can note, and this is an email that you can email ID that you can share. I mean, send any queries as well. So we'll be happy to discuss one-on-one on like any of this. All right. So now, like again, maybe very quickly going to the questions, right? So we have some of them, and maybe we'll request everybody that we might need like maybe 5-10 minutes extra from the allocated time, right? So please be with us. I mean, we will be answering all the questions one by one. So first thing is, I mean, there are a few messages from Will Amorin. Thanks, Will, for your messages. So I'll just read out for the benefit of all the participants. So he mentions that uh, chat gpt release, that is general pre-trained transformer game changer fall of 2022, will have the same impact the Netscape browser had on power of internet back in 1996. Absolutely will. Okay, very well summarized, and again, it's a good thought. Next thing that is Will has mentioned is ChatGPT created the step function increase in activity in the space from ML engineering to all engineering to founders, consumers, boardrooms of S&P 500 companies, and what applications actually do you see? This is a question. So what applications do you see now in finance? So I think this is something we have elaborated heavily during like our discussion. So I mean, anything specific you want to hear about the applications which we have not covered till now? So you might maybe uh, mention as again as a follow-up question. So and then the third point that Will has mentioned is taking compute resources from training to inference. That's taking complete power from building the model to running the model, planning and reasoning. Do you see this as the next level, and will this resolve some of the regulatory capture? Sanjay, if you have understood the question, would you like to take up that? He's mentioning taking compute resources from training to inference. That's taking
Okay.
compute power from building the model to running the model, planning and reasoning. Do you see this as the next level, and will this resolve some of the regulatory capture?
Okay, just briefly on the second point, which Will I think was pointing out, I suppose he meant maybe what he would be looking for is SOX compliance, Sarbanes-Oxley Act compliance within the boards of these Fortune 500 companies or S&P 500 companies, right? So that would be definitely a key area, as you know, it broadly is a part of within the remit of the compliance, which is any which way the focus area for Gen AI. On the third one, where he said that maybe the computational resources being diverted or maybe channelized further for interpretation, model interpretation, and explainability. Yes,
Right.
that would definitely help, right? And the only thing is that at this point in time, when the computational resources would be heavily required for development, right? We need quite efficient way of interpreting the model, and that's where a lot of research is happening, which is explainable AI, in the name of under the banner of explainable AI, where somebody's has already tried and built some game theory based explanation of these models using Shapley values. To what extent we could use that, leverage that for Gen AI is a question for the future and is another research topic, but definitely, right? For interpretation, the many of the these profiteering organization would not like to devote as many resources, computational resources, as one would like to think. Rather, they would be trying to exploit some efficient way of explaining the output to the regulators or to auditors or to anyone who is an external party, right, stakeholder, right? Yeah.
Sure. Right. So hope that answers your question, Will. I mean, any follow-up questions you have, you may put it up, and we will try to take it up. Right. So next question is from German Montenegro, and he asks, like, again, which would be the application of Gen AI on a stock or ETFs, equity portfolio construction? Uh, Either of you, I mean, whoever is comfortable with that, you can answer that question. So
We, like
yes,
Jasmati,
please.
as part of the deliberations, we've already said that investment portfolio management has so three aspects: the portfolio management, research and analysis, the actual trading execution, and finally the risk monitoring. All of these are areas where AI is going to have a significant impact. AI is
Correct.
going to have a significant impact, and there are so many use cases across the world these days where people are leveraging upon the AI capabilities to create tailor-made portfolios, both from the perspective of deciding which stocks you should enter into, how do you make the trading decision, and finally, how do you do the portfolio management and risk management. So yes, his observation is absolutely correct in the sense that there is no aspect of trading and portfolio management that is going to be untouched by this thing. So I hope that answers the question. Or is there a
Yes.
follow-up?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, any follow-up, German, I mean, you can mention in the chat window, but I think it answers the question. Sanjay, anything to add on that, or like, shall we go to the next question?
No, I think the world is becoming more eventful, and with the hedge funds who are mainly driving their any which way into driving their strategy, event-driven strategy, or some of the arbitrage, how they play around statistical arbitrage. That is also one of the area where such strategy could be generated through a Gen AI application, and maybe the rest all I think Ritesh has well covered, right?
Sure, wonderful. All right. So again, this is like one question. Maybe I'd like to start with Ritesh, and then of course Sanjay can add. Eh, this is from Subhas Konduru, and Subhas has asked like how Gen AI uses for loan sections in a bank. I mean, briefly we have touched upon most of the things, but any in specific you would like to add?
Well, I think the biggest usage could be, I think two uses that come to my mind is, first of all, the credit models can become more nuanced in the sense
Right.
that you can start using unconventional or non-traditional data sources as part of the credit decisioning process, number one. Number two, with Gen AI in particular, I think you can generate much more complex behavioral profiles of borrowers. So till now, we have only been concerned about, these models are essentially concerned about whether the borrower has the ability to pay. But the other aspect of credit analysis, whether they have the willingness to pay or not, that is something where AI can play a huge role. So in fact, traditional AI is already doing that. There is a
Correct.
company called Ping An in China. What they do when they onboard a customer or when a borrower approaches them, they would typically do some kind of a video call with the borrower where they ask about what activities he does, what his track record is, what is the end use of funds, and so on things. And there is an AI tool which is capturing the micro gestures of the borrower, the facial gestures, body language, and they are trying to create a behavioral profile of whether the borrower is telling truth or he's lying. So things
Right.
like that. So things like that. So credit. See, right now what happens is when it comes to retail credit, you are essentially relying on say the salary records or some market ref checks. When it comes to corporate credit, typically what are you relying upon? Balance sheets, which is at least a year old, and some market ref checks. What Gen AI has the ability to do, it has the ability to make that entire credit decisioning process much more equitable and much more interactive. I think there is a application.
Absolutely. I mean, Sanjay, anything you would like to add to that?
No, that is very well covered by Ritesh. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. So next question is from Saurabh. In fact, Saurabh Dev, and he has asked a couple of questions actually. So I'll frame it together. So first part is like how may this subject matter be exploited in rural and social sector, and second part is will it involve extensive investment? So Sanjay, I mean, would you like to take it up?
Yeah, so the lending activities, even in India, you understand that priority sector lending is the mainstay of many of the public sector banks, and so far the experience has been that to many such unbanked regions and unbanked sectors like fishery or maybe animal husbandry, the priority sector lending is not reaching, right? Even to the small scale cottage industries, right? So, as Ritesh also pointed out, it has to be some kind of a behavioral profile of those unbanked sectors, because you don't have typical financial statements or income statements coming right there, right? And this other part is application screening based on interaction, right? So mainly the, and also that again goes back to Ritesh point that how many of such natural language capability we could build in very local and regional languages, right? So all that put together, right? One could maybe exploit the local and regional languages and the way such services, banking services could be provisioned in such unbanked areas, that would be huge boost to the channelizing of the maybe funds from the bank in those unbanked sectors, right? They need not to open a branch, which is any which way very not very cost effective. They just exploit those areas of maybe where they could do community lending or maybe agrarian lending, or broadly those lending, those kind of lending which has never been, which has always been sidestepped by mainstream banks and have been overlooked. Yeah.
Right. Ritesh, anything you would like to add to that?
I think it's well covered. What I understood from the question was he was trying to ask how Gen AI or AI in general can be used for, say, financial inclusion. And I think there is a huge scope. The first scope, as we talk about personalization, what Gen AI has the capability to do, especially in remote areas, you can create customized or tailored financial products and services. Right now, no
Right.
one bothers to do it because these are not customers from whom you are going to earn a fat fees, and creating any financial product requires a lot of manpower, a lot of skill. So, I mean, it's not worth it. You are going to create a customized wealth management product for a HNI or a corporate customer, but not for a retail customer because it's not
Correct.
worth it. With I think this for the first time, what we are going to see is we are going to see uh, mass customization. if I can call it that way. It should be mass customization. It can help you generate, as I said, and Sanjay also pointed out, behavioral profile of people. So yes, in terms of financial inclusion, in terms of promoting sustainable finance, equitable finance, a lot of scope as far as I can see as a banker, a lot of scope.
Wonderful. That's a great insight, actually. So, Saurav, I hope that answers your question. Next question is from Ram Singh Nayak, and he's mentioned, could you share your experience and outlook on current AI governance practices for specific examples at FI institutions or any prescriptive guidance from regulators? Example, best practices, metrics around bias estimation uh, in retail credit risk models or transfer models used in customer engagement support, right? Either of you would like to add anything on this and want to?
Can you repeat the question once again?
Yeah, sure. So Ram Singh has asked us, can you share your experience and outlook on current AI governance practices for specific examples at financial FI institutions he has mentioned, or any prescriptive guidance from regulators? Example, best practices or metrics around bias estimation in retail credit risk models or transfer models uh, used in customer engagement or support.
So I think both Sanjay and I have already covered this, albeit in a different way.
Right.
Typically from the regulator, so we have covered this as part of the question which you raised, Nitish, on the regulatory risks involved. But the prime issues are, as Sanjay also mentioned multiple number of times, the explainability. So one of the best practices is that whatever model you are utilizing, that should not be and cannot be a black box. The regulator would want some clarity around how the decision making process is happening with those models. That is one thing. What are the, so in terms of biases, of course, I mean, in every jurisdiction, whether you go to US, whether you come to India or in Europe, in most of the countries around the world, the regulator would explicitly prohibit the banks from discriminating amongst people on the basis of race, on the basis of gender, on the basis of any other characteristic. So that is a best practice guideline that you cannot uh, discriminate systematically against people. Number one, you can't be biased against them. Number two, whatever models you are using for credit decision making, for capital provisioning, for making the credit decisions, for other aspects that should be explainable to the wider world so that people ultimately have a trust in the AI system. That's what I think the regulator wants. They don't want to get, you know, we have an element of surprise that no one knows what would be there. As per any specific examples are required in specific jurisdiction or banks, I can probably get back on that. I don't remember anything very explicitly right now, but those are the two broad fields: sustainability and uh, what we call implicit fairness. It should not appear like a bias system.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, wonderful insight. I mean, anything, Sanjay, you would like to add on that?
No, that's more of it. Just one aspect, like many of these Gen AI applications, right? Uh, there's I think you knew already that there's a BCBS 239, dossier on how to govern the data, right? Data traceability, data completeness, data accuracy. They are just the reg tech part of it. Many of the reg tech are adopting it to even go further, right? That whatever, no, it's not just about input data. It's also about maybe the output which is generated by these AI ML models, how to enforce the BCBS 239, so that somebody has to own that data, somebody has to sign off that data, somebody has to be data steward for that particular data, and there has to be proper traceability, right? And consistency and all those principles around data governance. So that is going to be enforced more strongly and stringently, given that we are talking about synthetic data, we are talking about a machine generated data, right? Where a lot of foul play could happen, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. That was very elaborative. So Ram Singh, I hope that answers your question. Now, like a question which actually is like comes to many. I mean, this is something I have also been asked many times, right? So this like Costa was asked, is there a chance of importance of programming skills going down due to Gen AI generating code? So Sanjay, I mean, if you can start answering that.
Look, yes and no both, right? Because nowadays there's very much prevalence of low code, no code kind of languages, right? But it's I see it as a very good, thing, because then the focus would more so be on the methodology and adapting the methodology for the specific business use case, rather than figuring out how to code and how to program that. If there would be pipelines, ML pipelines available, I see it as a very progressive way of looking at it. That obviously it doesn't take away the fact that some of the core engineering jobs would still be there, right? But a lot of code maintenance job, debugging jobs or code deployment jobs, right? Those kind of things will take a hit, because obviously maybe there's already a automated pipeline available, which any one of us can leverage for building the from front to back application development. uh, yeah. So but to your question, yes, maybe I think that the emphasis is on coding skills and programming skills would not go away, because some of the novel problems will require even far greater you know uh, you know uh, coders, and some of those people, not just who are concerned about how to write a script, but also how to write a script to interact between machines, right? Between different machines, right? So that would have that would be further taken forward. But uh, for a generic roles, it would definitely do a denting, and they would not be required anymore, right, going forward, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. So I think that, I mean, now like again, we have already extended 10 minutes. So basically now very quickly in the next 3, 4, 5 minutes, probably we would take up like the remaining questions. Anyway, like most of the things we have already discussed. So I'll take up few of the unique questions actually, which have not been like maybe covered in this end. So first is like from Shashank. He asks, are there any are there any regulations from RBI and Indian government for use of Gen AI in fintech? I mean, either of you, anyone wants to maybe touch upon this?
RBI regulations around Gen AI.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of anything specific that would have come here. Not aware.
Right. Sanjay, any idea? Anything on those lines?
No, I also have the same opinion. I'm not aware of any RBI circular per se, right, which specifically talk about this. But generally, the evolutionary cycle is so that most of these, regulatory bodies, they are themselves coming up with a different outfit called RegTech, right? Which is a very carve out outfit how to regulate the tech firm, right? Which like fintech ecosystem, right? Or those kind of firm which uh, render the products, financial products and services through technology, how to regulate them. And then maybe once that is established, right, obviously they would be hiring technocrat within that arm to figure out what kind of regulation would be required, could be tailor made for such firms.
Absolutely.
Look, I will
Absolutely.
just add a bit to that. See, there are
Sure.
no scholars as such, but of course, I think one of the I'm not sure if it was the deputy RBI governor or someone else. A few months ago, they gave a speech, and there was an RBI publication also which I have read, but it essentially focused on the kind of transformation that AI and Gen AI can bring to the banking sector. And the RBI, through that paper, they have tried to give some guiding principles that banks should follow when they are integrating AI as part of their operations. So these
Right.
principles we have already discussed at length. It's about, essentially it focuses around ethical use of AI. That seems to be the primary concern of the regulator as of now. I don't think we have today reached a stage where AI can be a big driver of financial stability or a contagion of systematic or systemic risk. But of course, the regulator is saying that here you are integrating these things. Make sure it is fair, make sure it is responsible, make sure it is transparent, explainable, ethical. Those are some guiding principles. I have read about those guiding principles earlier in RBI publication. Other than that, I have not read about anything specific that RBI would have prescribed to banks as to, oh, this is how you should do about it.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, I hope that answers your question. Next question is from Subham, which maybe I would like to start by answering, and then actually, I mean, of course, gentlemen, you can add to it. So he has mentioned, can you please provide some resource to learn from for Gen AI in the field of compliance? So first thing is, Subham, I mean, if you want to apply Gen AI to any field, right, including compliance or regulatory or anything, right? So the first you have to, I mean, understand Gen AI in general, and then you have to understand that field. So if you have an understanding of both, I mean, resources, of course, again, there are thousands of courses nowadays, like on like general Gen AI and all that, right? Not thousands, but again, yeah, of course, there are now many courses. Right? But yeah, I mean, maybe jokingly, I mean, the best resource would be to learn from our course actually, because I don't see many other course which is teaching Gen AI in aspects of like applications in finance, right? So our course will have applications in like finance, including compliance. So that can definitely be one of the resources. I'm just not mentioning to promote the course, but since you asked about resource, this is definitely one of the resource where you can actually focus on both the aspects in a single course. Otherwise, I mean, yes, I mean, you pick up both the aspects. You pick up Gen AI from any general course or Gen AI, I mean, you read about it and you pick up the field of compliance, right? I mean, you understand, if you understand the domain, you can apply that the Gen AI skills to compliance or any other field, right? Anything, gentlemen, you would like to add on that?
No, I think that's adequately placed it. Yeah, Ritesh.
Nothing from my side.
Sure. Okay. Um, I mean, this is passing on this question probably. I mean, is a question on like implication in corporate marketing or specifically for digital marketing, like for a role of chief marketing officer. So Sajid, maybe like this is something we can discuss separately, because I mean we would like to focus this discussion mostly related to the finance and related areas. So related to marketing and digital marketing, again, let's keep the question, and also because of the paucity of the time, maybe like again we can talk about that one on one.
But just to add a line to that, to answer his question, marketing is one area where I believe AI and Gen AI in particular is going to have a huge impact. Whether it
Yes,
is
yes.
about,
I mean,
yeah,
marketing already we have seen like the entire digital marketing is like now AI based, right? So a lot of it
true,
already. Yeah,
true.
so that's definitely,
Yes.
I mean, it's
Mm.
one of the area, because marketing is I mean, entirely your behavioral study, and then again, placing your products basis the behavior. So that's definitely one of the area where it is being used for quite some time now, right? So yeah, of course, and I'm sure generative AI also, I mean, it has people have started use, though I'm not an expert, but I mean, as far as I understand, that's also something people have definitely started using, right? So going to the next question from Sajid again. So adding the same, if someone is to risk analysis, FRM, or into quant or algo CFA, will be mandatory for the individual to have an age. Let me reread the question for me to also understand. Okay, so it's a follow-up question. No, not a follow-up actually. It's a question. Is that if someone is to risk analysis FRM or into quant or algo, CFA will be mandatory for the individual to have an age. Okay. Of course, Ritesh is an CFA expert. He is a CFA himself, and again, he also teaches a lot on CFA. But like maybe I start by adding 2 cents. Been being in education for 2 decades now. So, Sajid, to be very honest, CFA is considered a gold standard in the investment industry, right? So anything you want to do it in investment, if you have a CFA, definitely it's a good value add, right? There is no doubt about it. CFA covers the basic finance, particularly the investment finance fundamental research aspect in like very detail. So that's always a good course to have. And in fact, actually, I do suggest this for people who wants to enter into the quant industry as well. Though a lot of the pure quant people, they would actually may not agree with me. But again, the thing is, though CFA is not directly a quant course, but again, quant doesn't operate in vacuum, right? I mean, when you talk about quant finance, it's at the end of the day study of the finance using mathematical models. So given the fact that CFA teaches you the core financial aspects very deeply, even if somebody wants to target quant roles and like wants to have an CFA as an additional uh, certification, it's always useful. So in summary, from my side, CFA is something anybody can do if they have an interest in working in like the investment finance industry, or maybe I mean in the investment banking industry, particularly the corporate finance side, or even in banking, particularly in the corporate and all this kind of industry. Anything, Ritesh, you want to add?
So I kind of lost the question a bit. So can you just tell me what exactly is he asking for?
So his question is that for different areas of finance, maybe like risk analysis or quant or algo trading or anything, CFA will be mandatory for the individual to have an age. So he has asked whether CFA is mandatory. So I mean, as I what I put it is
No,
like may not be mandatory, but it is definitely a good to have knowledge set for anybody who is wanting to work in finance.
in terms of knowledge, absolutely correct, Nitish. I don't think it's mandatory, especially for risk management. CFA actually does not have their focus is not on risk management. Their focus is mostly on equity investment and wealth
Correct.
management, financial planning, that kind of stuff. But of course, I mean, their curriculum is quite exhaustive and talks about a lot of things. But if it's specifically about risk management, is CFA is mandatory? Of course not.
Yeah, that's correct. No, that's what I also mentioned, right? It's not mandatory, but again, anything you want to do in finance, because risk management or algo trading, nothing is in vacuum. You have to understand the
Correct.
market. And
Correct.
again, CFA being like a very comprehensive coverage of the general finance, right? So, I mean, if you're dealing with anything in finance, having a good idea about the basic finance always helps. So that's my thought. But yeah, I mean, CFA does not cover much of risk management, neither quant. So as I said, it's not a direct course for that, but yeah, it's good to have. Going to the next question quickly. Okay, now next 2 minutes and two questions, and then maybe 2 3 minutes, and we'll conclude the session, right? So next question is on Palas, and this is first. First, I would like Sanjay to maybe start with this, and then we'll go to Ritesh also. How do you foresee the integration of generative AI and XAI evolving in the future of the metaverse? Any thought that you would like to share on this?
What was the
The
other part?
meta
Generative AI and XAI. But
Sorry.
you said something after generative AI and XAI.
Yeah, he mentioned XAI. I mean, you cannot
explainable I
Okay.
suppose.
I hope
Yeah,
so.
but what is this multiverse? He said some
Metaverse,
cosmology.
metaverse in
Sorry,
the future, metaverse.
I think I'm a bit withdrawn from that. Ritesh, I would pass it on to you for playing safe.
So I think so. I would give. So of course, I mean, I feel generative AI has huge applications in metaverse. See, if you look at the structure of the metaverse, it is all about creating and enhancing digital connections, digital networking, and there Gen AI can play a huge role. It can help you create collaboration and connection in the metaverse. Of course, uh, I read about something very interesting the other day, that if there is a large language model which is driven by empathy, okay, people are talking in those terms, a large language model which is driven by empathy, then it could enhance the way your avatar interacts with other avatars in the metaverse. So, I mean, then they're saying that Gen AI can help you create, multi-sensory interactions in the metaverse. So to answer that in brief, I'm not aware about the exact technology that people are using, but the way I perceive the metaverse, huge applications of Gen AI, huge applications of Gen AI in terms of creating a much richer metaverse, if I can put it that.
Sure. I hope that answers your question. The last question for the day, this is from Priyesh, and he mentions for pricing of illiquid financial instruments using AI models, how will users tackle risk coming in from historical training data and other inherent biases in these models? Sanjay, maybe if you can answer that question first.
Yeah. So, when it comes to carbon trading, as well as green bonds and all these financial instruments, including as an alternative, many cryptos which have floated in the market, right? So there's a uh, so the risk is obviously there that you could use synthetic data generated by Gen AI, right, to train those models. But the point is this, that if you look from a broader perspective, that it is better than having very less data to train the model and leading to a model overfitted model, right?
Correct.
So in a way, where there are no options or dearth of any options in terms of the data required by the massive data required by, anyway, these neural networks, the huge corpus required by these neural networks, synthetic data, generated by Gen AI helps, right? And if maybe it could be checked for certain biases, as you said, right? There are ways to check for specific biases, selection bias, or maybe any other bias, judgmental bias, or different kind of biases in the data, right? Once but that need to be enforced once you have all those biases properly diagnosed and checked, that okay, there are no biases which have been introduced while generating that data, right? You could have a reasonable, reliable data set which you could prove to your regulators and various stakeholders that this data is really could be used meaningfully for those modeling problems where there's a data scarcity or data sparsity, right? So that is what I think, right, about this topic. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. So, I mean, we have already extended almost half an hour, but it was so engrossing and like again, the topic being so interesting and gentlemen, your thoughts were so insightful that I mean, we didn't realize, but and then there were so many questions as well. But I mean, thanks to both of you that you patiently answered all the questions from my side and from the audience as well. I mean, and to the audience also, like again, it has been a pleasure. I mean, we can see a lot of people still with us hearing about this, so shows the real interest. Thank you once again to the entire audience for joining us for this session. And I mean, I mean, many of you already know. So, as a part of our IIQF deep dive with IIQF experts webinar series, we regularly conduct this kind of webinars and panel discussions on various important topics. So please keep following us on our like various pages, social media pages, websites, and of course we will be intimating you of our future such kind of sessions. And so keep track of us. I mean, see you in the next session. Thank you, Sanjay, and thank you, Ritesh, once again. It was like really, really informative for me as well. A lot of this, it was very, very insightful. Thank you.
Thanks all. Thanks,
Thank you
Nitish.
very much,
Thanks,
everyone.
Ritesh.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Have a nice day.
Thanks. Right. So with that, we'll end the session. See you all in the next webinar. Thank you.